Most anyone with enough know-how to start a car ought to be able to do simple maintenance work on it. The important thing to remember is that the work needs to be done on set intervals as stated in your owner's manual. A little tender loving care can add years to the life of your automobile. Of course, any work you have done on your car is going to cost you, and various factors determine how much that will be. The average price for an oil and filter change with a grease job is $19. It can be as low as $13 and as high as $22. It depends on the kind of car you have and the type and amount of oil you need. Tune-ups are even more expensive. They can run from $20 to $60, depending on, again, what type of car you have. Doing it yourself can save a lot of money, and since changing a car's oil and filter is relatively simple, many people prefer to do it themselves. A quart of 10W40 motor oil costs a little more than $1, a filter anywhere from $2 to $4. Tune-ups, though, are a little more difficult, especially if your car has an electronic ignition system. But if you decide to change your car's spark plugs yourself, you could save a considerable amount of money. Spark plugs run about 90 cents a piece. You need to have the oil level checked at least every other time you fill up with gas. If the level is below the add mark on the dipstick, put in the type of oil specified in your owner's manual. And it's recommended that the oil filter be changed every other time the oil is changed. You may need to change the plugs if your car's hard to start, if it pings, or if there's excessive gas consumption or overheating. To service your car yourself, you just need a few tools, a place to do it, and a little know-how. Remember, skipping routine care or skimping on such things as oil changes and tune-ups are directly to blame for many high repair bills and can permanently damage your car. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
The Commission says legislators can introduce, debate, support, and even encourage fellow lawmakers to support the bill, but if voting yes indicates that legislators who are also educators will benefit directly from the bill, they should refrain from voting on it. The Commission wants to get an advisory opinion from the Clerk of the Supreme Court and hold a public hearing on the issue before making a final decision. The Commission says some opinion must be reached soon so it can settle what it called a political thicket issue. In other opinion matters, the Ethics Commission says a lobbyist can pay for a legislator and his or her spouse's expenses for a 3-day golfing weekend. The Commission says this social occasion doesn't violate the ethics law. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
The abortion issue drew a large crowd in the House Health Committee. The abortion bill would require teenagers to have parental permission when considering an abortion. The committee put off any decision on that bill. The Health Committee also postponed a vote on a bill regulating acupuncture. As the committee considered the bill, they found it would have to be rewritten since there is so little acupuncture practiced in the state. In the House Judiciary Committee, a bill was favorably reported that would prevent juveniles from being protected by the youthful offender law if they were charged with any one of 10 serious crimes, such as murder, rape, or the sale of drugs. The bill's sponsor, Bill Smith, said the bill is aimed at what he described as the cadre of hardcore scum of juvenile crime. In the House Ways and Means Committee, a Senate bill giving members of the Public Service Commission an immediate pay raise passed. It will now go before the full House for what could be final consideration. The House committee members also approved a bill raising the per diem allowances paid state officials while traveling on state business. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Taken. There's not going to be any action.
Their names, Mr. Speaker: Adams C., Adams H., Albright, Amaro, Barton, Bedsole, Bennett, Bettle, Blake, Bowles, Act to the Sheriff's Department. House Bill 1038 to provide for a special to Mountain Brook for maids who live in downtown Birmingham. And whereas the residents of Maytown of West Jefferson are not sympathetic to a downtown merchant when it is said that business is off 40% because of no transit service, that is illogical that either 8,000 people can have this ability to impose taxes.
That assessment was made in the March 23rd edition of the Chronicle of Higher Education. The article says people assume there's an oversupply of teachers because enrollments in teacher education programs are declining all over the country. In 1972, there was an overabundance of teachers and many students turned away from teaching, but now there's a critical need. The article says the reason for the teacher shortage is an increasing population where baby boom babies are now having children of their own, migration into Sunbelt areas, and students turning away from education because they fear an inflated job market and low salaries. Locally, Dr. Norbert Martins, Dean of Auburn University at Montgomery School of Education, says there's a shortage of science and math teachers. He says the supply of English teachers is also on the decline. But in Montgomery County, School Superintendent Henry Adair says currently there's a sufficient number of these teachers. He says areas of math, science, industrial arts, and gifted education have the smallest number of applicants, but says right now there are enough qualified people to fill these positions. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News. Dr. Pierce says he doesn't think it's been established that there will be a teacher shortage by 1985. He says there's not enough information available to determine how many teachers will be needed in the years ahead, and he says it's difficult to predict what teaching fields in what parts of the country will have the greatest need. Locally, the Dean of Education at Auburn University at Montgomery, Dr. Norbert Martins, says there's a critical demand for science and math teachers, and the supply of English teachers has declined. But Dr. Pierce says he knows of no decline in English teachers and says the shortage in science and math is nothing new.
We've always had that shortage, to my knowledge, primarily because people with good preparation in those fields are able to compete in industry and in private business and are able to secure higher salaries.
He says the enrollments in the state's teacher education programs have decreased fairly substantially at the undergrad and grad level. Dr. Pierce says at the grad level, teachers find that it's financially advantageous to continue their education. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Unless you had suspension of the rules, it cannot pass. So we're not going to call the roll of the district. No longer place bills on the consent calendar. Yesterday was the last day that you could place a bill on the consent calendar. Senator Little, you have a resolution.
That he was there.
Right. We can pass your resolution too, Senator Little. Any further resolutions at this time? All right, gentlemen, before we get to the next item of business.
Anybody can talk to me on these. So thinking about the next local bill is yours. And
James Robert Rayford was born April 16, 1935, in the small Clay County town of Ashland, Alabama. He attended Clay County School and received his bachelor's degree from Auburn University in August of 1959. His career with the state of Alabama began a year later in 1960 when he went to work with the Examiners of Public Accounts. In 1971, he shifted to the State Budget Office under the Finance Department. 4 years later, in 1975, Rayford was named Acting Budget Officer, succeeding Jake Jordan, who retired. And then in 1976, he was named Permanent Budget Officer. A friend of Rayford's was summoned to Rayford's residence by a neighbor around 3 this morning. He said Rayford, who was a bachelor, told paramedics he was a chronic asthmatic and having trouble breathing. Doctors believe Rayford apparently suffered a heart attack while paramedics were trying to assist. Graveside services for Rayford have been set for 2 p.m. Friday in Ashland. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
Commission members called the question a thorny issue because no final answer could be reached. But the commission did say legislator or educators benefiting directly from the legislation shouldn't vote on it. Director Melvin Cooper says legislators can introduce, debate, support, and even encourage fellow lawmakers to support the bill, but should refrain from voting on it because voting yes indicates a vested interest. The commission, however, is deferring the question until it can get an advisory opinion from the clerk of the Supreme Court and hold a public hearing on the issue. In other opinions today, the Ethics Commission says lobbyists paying for lunch and golf expenses for a legislator and his spouse is a social occasion. The commission admits the activity may violate the spirit of the law, but says it does not violate the law. Kim Davis, WSFA, TV News.
Well, I think everybody knows what we're doing. We've got several bills here to sign. The first is a consumer protection bill. I believe the heart of it.
More to me than any other bill.
I know you'll be supporting a lot of my other reform later to sign.
Consumers, I suppose.
That means 100%. I'm glad to know you with us.
The jury strike system allows lawyers on both sides of a case to reject persons they don't think will make good jurors. In most Alabama judicial circuits, the present system allows the defense attorneys to strike 2 potential jurors to every 1 strike allotted the prosecutor. But prosecutors say that system gives defendants an advantage in a trial by allowing them more say in the composition of a jury. They favor the proposed 1-for-1 strike system. Defense attorneys claim the current system isn't an advantage, but a right, that it would be unfair for a man's accusers to pick his jury too. Families of victims spoke in favor of the 1-for-1 strike bill. One woman said her 10-year-old daughter was sexually assaulted and that the jury was stacked because it consisted of all men, most of them young and most childless. Attorney General Charles Graddick says all he wants is for the defense and the prosecution to begin a trial on an equal footing. He pointed out that Alabama is one of only 3 states that have a 2-to-1 strike system. The Senate committee passed the bill, including an amendment to require both sides in a criminal case to exchange information about their cases. The bill now goes to the full Senate and then must go to the House before it can become law, a long process with only 5 days left in the legislative session. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
The Colts struck for 2 quick runs in the first on RBI singles by Mark Higgins and Phil Allen. Shortly thereafter, the rains came, making any Central comeback that much more difficult. Hooper's Bane Vaughn got credit for his 6th win against no losses. Good defense by the Colts backed up Vaughn's stellar performance on the mound. It was Hooper's 10th win in 12 games. More importantly, though, the victory gave the Colts the district championship and the home field advantage when the state private school playoffs begin May 11th. They'll host either Glenwood or Macon Academy. Hooper coach Roger Taylor says Glenwood may just be the team to beat. Coach Jay Spiller and the Central Alabama Academy Rebels are hoping for a wild card spot in the playoffs. Central dropped to 10-6 with the loss to Hooper today. Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports.
I want everybody in the football department, of the athletic department, is to be a winner or a loser. I don't want, I want everybody to get involved from an emotional standpoint, getting the team ready to play on Saturday, and I would like to make it as, as a competitive a situation as you can make it.
Cheerleaders?
Cheerleaders, student body,
How about the band?
Faculty. The band didn't want to be split up, so they're going to sit in the middle of the field in the end zone, and they're going to play for both sides. But we're going to have a lot of fun, and that's the way it should be.
You're going to divide up everybody. I mean, secretaries.
We're going to I want everybody in the football department, of the athletic department, is to be a winner or a loser. I don't want, I want everybody to get involved from an emotional standpoint, getting the team ready to play on Saturday, and I would like to make it as, as a competitive a situation as you can make it.
Cheerleaders?
Cheerleaders, student body,
How about the band?
Faculty. The band didn't want to be split up, so they're going to sit in the middle of the field in the end zone, and they're going to play for both sides. But we're going to have a lot of fun, and that's the way it should be.
The Senate version of the education budget restores some of the money Governor Fob James' proposal removed from higher education. Montgomery Senator Bishop Barron introduced an amendment to cut colleges and junior colleges by some $24 million, but the measure failed. So did another Barron amendment to prohibit any education trust fund money from paying lobbyists. The Senate did approve several amendments to add conditional funds to the budget, $16 million worth should the money become available. All in all, the Senate version exceeds expected revenue based on the anticipated 5% growth rate, but few senators expect the budget to survive as the Senate has passed it. Most likely the House will ask for a conference committee to come up with an education budget both houses can live with. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Representative Lee Pegues has worked all week lobbying for this bill that would strengthen what would become the Post-Secondary Education Commission. Tuesday, opponents of the bill effectively erased part of the thrust of Pegues' bill by removing two-year schools from the Commission's curriculum jurisdiction. But Pegues worked hard to save his bill by keeping junior colleges under the board, but removing technical schools, a move one legislator said would only split opposition to the overall bill. Apparently it worked, because Pegues managed to stave off nearly a dozen amendments that would have watered down or limited the Commission's authority. What Pegues salvaged was very important for Governor James, since this is about the only chance the governor will have to see one of the major parts of his legislative package make it. Montgomery's Alvin Holmes tacked on one amendment that would require the 14-member board to reflect the state's racial makeup. That bill now goes to the Senate. The other two major bills passed by the House appropriated $90 million of oil lease money, $45 million to mental health and $45 million to prisons. The money can only be spent on capital outlay. Representative Walter Owens originally asked for $65 million for mental health, but Eric Cates convinced the House $45 million would do. Before the House sent the package to the Senate, Jack Venable tacked on an amendment protecting the original $449 million in oil lease money. Earlier, the Senate had also passed similar bills, only they appropriated $65 million to mental health. It looks like the issue could end up in a conference committee. Even earlier in the day, the House Education Committee effectively killed the House version of the creationism bill by failing to vote on it. The Senate version, which is out of the Senate committee, still has a chance of making it through the legislature if it's passed by next Tuesday. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Nancy Rawls, who heads the alliance, says their goal is to abolish the current fuel adjustment cost. She says the recent increase to $12.85 is unrealistic.
Let me assure you that we can stop this, as you call, never-ending rate increases. But we will have to work together in order to stop this thing.
But Mrs. Rawls says she understands the Commission's hands are tied, that they have no say in granting the fuel adjustment increases because of rules and regulations. That's why she says the May 11th meeting is so important. PSC President Billy Joe Camp, speaking to a group of hospital engineers, echoed Mrs. Rawls, saying there must be a change in procedure before the Commission can do anything.
We found out from that that the Commission had really, in its own rules, dealt away every prerogative that it had back in 1975.
Camp says one way for Alabama Power to prevent errors in its computation is to put management responsibility back into a company that enjoys complete monopoly. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Approaches, new ideas and new solutions. Neither government nor business and industry can revert. To assure you that I'm not a purveyor of doom and gloom about the motor vehicle industry. Set of problems in the motor vehicle industry. Industry back on its feet. And with one of every...
them verbatim.
The general fund budget that came out of the Senate Finance and Taxation Committee was a substitute for the House version and appropriated $388 million for next year. That's already $23 million more than predicted revenues. Then senators took turns adding several amendments to the bill, including untold millions of dollars. That prompted Mobile Senator Sonny Callahan to threaten to filibuster the budget because he's afraid that the extra appropriations will dip into the oil lease money. Callahan is chairman of a committee studying how the oil money will be spent. But Birmingham Senator J. Richmond Pearson told Callahan there's no way the House will concur in the Senate amendments, and so the general fund is likely to go to a conference committee to be balanced. Callahan said he just doesn't want the House to get the idea that the Senate wants to spend the oil lease money on current expenses. So the Senate added an amendment to the general fund saying that no oil lease money or its interest will be used for current expenses in the general fund. That doesn't affect capital outlay that may be approved in other bills. Then Lieutenant Governor George McMillan promised Callahan that if the budget does go to a conference committee, McMillan will ask the Senate to tell the conferees whether it still feels none of the oil lease money should be used for the general fund budget. The budget finally passed the Senate on a vote of 22 to 8. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Is even the federal government has antitrust laws.
Oh my God. Good run, Doc.
The question to be answered on this first day of qualifying here at the Winston 500, could anyone better the record-setting speed set last year by David Pearson of 197 miles per hour? No one did that, but Bobby Allison sure came close. Abandoning his controversial Pontiac Le Mans for a Buick Regal, Allison took the pole at a speed of 195.864 miles per hour. Earlier today, I asked Allison, the 1979 winner of the Winston 500, about his latest secret weapon.
Well, I don't know if you'd call it that. We have a Buick here, and we're pleased with the car so far, and we hope it's a good race car. You know, we've worked real hard this year, and we've had some hard luck and some hardships, and you know, those are behind us, and this race is out in front of us, and in practice so far, the car's been doing pretty good.
Is it running as fast as the Le Mans?
I don't know.
Any bitterness towards NASCAR over the ruling?
We're here to run this race.
On Allison's outside Sunday will be last year's Winston 500 champ, Buddy Baker. Baker had the second fastest qualifying time today. He sent his UNO Buick around the 1.6-mile track at 195.209 miles per hour. An up-and-coming 24-year-old driver from Tennessee, Mike Alexander, surprised everyone, taking the inside position on the second row. Alexander, also in a Buick, was making his first appearance at Talladega. In all, 19 of the top 20 drivers posted speeds of better than 190 miles per hour. Most observers feel you can pretty well throw out the book when it comes to picking a favorite to win the Winston 500. The new, smaller, downsized cars have equaled things out a bit, and that should make for a very interesting race on Sunday. The Alabama International Motor Speedway, Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports. And where's number 5? The question to be answered on this first day of qualifying here at the Winston 500, could anyone better the record-setting speed set last year by David Pearson of 197 miles per hour? No one did that, but Bobby Allison sure came close. Abandoning his controversial Pontiac Le Mans for a Buick Regal, Allison took the pole at a speed of 195.864 miles per hour. On Allison's outside Sunday will be last year's Winston 500 champ, Buddy Baker. Baker had the second fastest qualifying time today. He sent his UNO Buick around the 1.6-mile track at 195.209 miles per hour. An up-and-coming 24-year-old driver from Tennessee, Mike Alexander, surprised everyone, taking the inside position on the second row. Alexander, also in a Buick, was making his first appearance at Talladega. In all, 19 of the top 20 drivers posted speeds of better than 190 miles per hour. The new, smaller, downsized cars have equaled things out a bit, and that should make for a very interesting race on Sunday. the Alabama International Motor Speedway, Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports. And where's number 5?
Industrial interests are backing the bill because it would prohibit an injured employee from suing a coworker or management over his injury. Industry leaders say workman's compensation should be adequate to cover the injury, but the bill's opponents, who include trial lawyers, say workman's comp isn't adequate in cases of catastrophic injury. And they say if industries are made immune from lawsuits, owners will pay less attention to safety precautions. But the bill calls for a constitutional amendment to prevent the co-employee lawsuits, and so requires approval from 2/3 of the Senate. So far, the votes just haven't been there. Earlier today, the Senate had problems with the general fund budget for next year. It finally passed, loaded with added expenditures that bring the budget to a total of $393 million. That's $30 million more than revenue forecasters expect the fund to bring in next year. The budget now returns to the House and will probably end up in a conference committee where legislators from both sides will try to find a compromise. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Richard Petty, the NASCAR's all-time winningest driver, has never won the Winston 500. Does that bother you at all?
Well, anytime I don't win a race, it bothers me. You know, I'd like to win, but it's no big deal. There's got to be some things that when I quit driving in another 15 or 20 years, there's got to be some things that, you know, that I hadn't able to accomplish, and this might be one of them, and I'm not going to worry about it one way or the other.
How's the car running?
Not too good right now. We're about 5 or 6 mile an hour slow, and we've done changed engines and gears and everything else, and it really hadn't got the speed up on it yet. In the last couple of weeks, we hadn't done too good, and we were looking forward to the race here at Talladega, hoping to get ourselves back started again.
You expect 5 or 6 guys to be right there at the finish line Sunday?
Well, they're running right now. It's going to look like it's going to be a real big crowd, but, you know, this is 500 miles, and this is Talladega, so anything can happen. Yeah.
It is in effect a rate that was designed by the Commission after holding full hearings. And what the company does, the way the procedure works, is that we provide the numbers each month for the estimates on the fuel that's to be used, and then the numbers for the corrections between estimated previous times and actual use experiences. And we simply put the numbers into the formula and turn the crank, if you will, and out comes a number. It's a set formula. We have no way to control how much it's going to go up or down. And that's a point that several people have said, well, you know, if the power company will better manage, maybe it could hold down the cost of the fuel, and it simply cannot, under the Commission's formula, do anything but what we're doing. And they want to make that clear.
Adams, who was convicted of bribery in October 1979 and served a state jail term, was charged with federal violations that he extorted the money from the Phillips Supply Company of Gadsden, Alabama. Adams has agreed to tell Justice Department officials all he knows about bribes, kickbacks, and other wrongdoing involving the State Building Commission and Alabama's 67 school districts. Adams is now free on his own personal bond. U.S. Attorney Barry Teague is in charge of the probe.
Is there an active investigation now going on into school districts who did business with the same company that Mr. Adams said he took money from?
I could not confirm a statement of that nature.
Would you deny it?
I just would not comment at all.
The Justice Department won't comment on how many school districts or how many school superintendents may be under investigation by the FBI for taking bribes and kickbacks from the supply company that Adams said he extorted money from. We do know that it is a widespread investigation and could take up to a year to complete. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News at the Federal Courthouse.
State know the mill was rigged from the bottom up. They cared less how much you owe.
Besides the book and some traveling, what about the future for Melba Till Allen?
Well, I'm leaving that wide open. I enjoy painting, and of course I will be helping my family as much as they need me to, to help with the grandchildren and with the trucking company. And it's kind of nice to choose what I want to do. And then another thing, a lot of people have tried to pin me down about what I'm going to do. Whether or not my critics believe it, I do not care, but for 25 years I've tried very hard to let the Lord lead me. And I can't, if I'm going to let the Lord lead me, I can't say, well, okay, I'm going to do this, that, and the other. I can just say what I would like to do.
And perform a traffic safety activity where it's clear that a company interest of the insurance industry is reflected in their records about the benefits of driver training. That was a one-time shot in the arm, clearly.
Leading causes of
1 year or longer if they can do it again next year. We have an additional plaque here, which is a small personal plaque, which goes to Captain Jones, which is his to keep. Captain Jones, congratulations. He doesn't say much. He does a good job, though. Thank you, Captain.
Tuscaloosa attorney Jack Drake is one of the lawyers representing patients of the state's mental health system and one of the attorneys who asked Judge Thompson to put a freeze on the oil lease money, except for use in complying with the reform order. Drake told Judge Thompson there's been little progress in the decades since the issue was brought to federal court. Drake said even Governor James hasn't been able to meet his own compliance plan of last year. He says it's time the court admonished the governor and forced the state to use any or all of the $449 million to upgrade the state's mental health system. But Governor James' attorney, Robert Sasser, countered by saying another more complete and detailed compliance plan is in the works and should be ready for the court in at least 2 weeks. Sasser also said any court ruling now on the freeze would be premature since the legislature is already considering several bills that would pump as much as $65 million of oil lease money into the mental health construction needs. Judge Thompson agreed to wait on any ruling until after the legislature ends its session May 18th, at which time it'll be more evident what the legislature is doing to comply with the federal court order. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the federal courthouse.
People that are coming along now will have to work that way. Visualize this department. Everybody makes it. Everybody can't be cheap. Everybody can't be dead. That they're not being promoted to do the same job. And we're going to make sure that those who do the work, do the job, are the ones that are going to get promoted. Right. That's right. Got him hidden. Congratulations to you. Congratulations.
To Investigator Frank Eccles. Individual pictures.
That's right. Congratulations.
To Corporal Beverly Rambo. Big stick.
Congratulations.
You be careful. To Corporal James Time. Double T.
Come on.
Jim, I check with you. Where's Gary? Gary?
have guests of Senator Proctor, 41 senior citizens from Thorsby, Alabama.
And I think it's time that
sit out there and starve to death, pay rent on that building, and pay rent on their sign.
convenience stores out of business or on the road merely because I do not believe that to be in the public interest. If we're going to have a monopoly, and I think in the
They're competitive, and we run close with these cars as we did with the big cars. So I don't see any disadvantage as far as the race fans don't get deprived of seeing a good race.
And it's a completely different automobile than what we're used to running, and it takes a little bit of adjustment for the drivers, the crews, and I think we're starting to figure them out, though.
I was hoping that they'd go ahead and do it a little bit quicker, but you know, we'd run other cars for like 4 or 5 years, that particular same body style. So it was well timed that we would change and went to smaller cars.
One of the big assets of our sport is identification with the fans and what we drive. And the last race up here, I was in a 76 Cougar, which there's not many of those things left, and this little Thunderbird, they can relate to it.
The Trojans' turnaround reached its peak last weekend when they won their second consecutive Gulf South Conference crown. It wasn't easy. The Trojans had to take 2 from Delta State on the final day of the tournament.
Not in all my years of baseball. I tell you, Dave, that was the most exciting 2 ball games I think I've ever been through, and I don't know that I want to go through 2 more just like them.
Senior Danny Cox threw his 6th shutout of the season during the tournament. Troy State's ace also came on in relief to win the final 2 games.
Came in one time, bases loaded, no outs, and I ran a count of 3-1 on a guy and threw a couple of strikes, and he took them. I was glad there, and then got a ground ball to the next guy and returned 2. Got out of that inning, and that's just the way it's been all year for him.
Cox credits his teammates. After all, Trojan bats have been anything but silent all year. John Browner leads the team in home runs with 12 and a school record 55 RBIs. Mike Austin, Kevin McDaniel, and Montgomery's Mike Rolfes all have .375 or better batting averages. Rolfes here smashed 2 home runs in one of the tournament games. He sent 3 out of the park during batting practice this afternoon. Troy State will close out its regular season Tuesday against UAB in Birmingham. Sometime next week, regional bids will be handed out. Then there's the College World Series down the road. Maybe there's room for just one more miracle. Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports.
In this case, we're talking about an individual. I am informed, however, that there are or may be agencies, real estate rental agencies, who might be simulating legal process